Hey everyone, welcome back to the Primal Pioneer. Today I want to talk about metabolic disorder. And I know that there's been a lot discussed with regard to causes of metabolic disorder, and much of which is discussed in any area of medical practice, alternative, naturopathic, mitochondrial world. Tends to focus on a very physical 3D level. That's important. I'm going to talk about things on the 3D level that actually can make metabolic health worse, that can trigger poor metabolic health. I'm going to talk about that today, but I'm also going to spend time talking about what the actual root cause of metabolic disorders are, and steps that you can take to rectify metabolic disorder, steps that you can take to prevent metabolic disorder. And let's just start by, if you're wondering what metabolic disorder is, it's actually a term that covers a broad and wide range of disorders, including type 2 diabetes, overweight struggles, weight struggles, low energy issues, and even issues like hypothyroidism, PCOS, and some cancers. So, it covers many disorders and diseases, and all of which can be put into a nice box and considered, hey, that's a metabolic disorder. And while those disorders and others definitely affect one's metabolic health, today I'm going to talk about expanding our view on, yes, these have metabolic there's metabolic disruptions going on in these cases, type 2 diabetes, weight struggles, PCOS, cancer, hypothyroidism, etc. Right? Yeah, sure. There's metabolic dysregulation going on here, and I will say, if it was just completely a metabolic disorder, if those issues were completely related 100% to metabolic dysregulation, then by using modalities that correct our metabolic health, such as diet, sunlight, and indoor lighting practices, all of which are incredibly important. But if that were the whole story, then people who go all in with those practices would be totally cured of their metabolic imbalances. And I have not seen that. I have seen a lot of people just focus primarily on those modalities and make amazing progress with their metabolic health. However, I'm going to talk about those today and how you can use those modalities to support your metabolic health, because we can't just throw them out. We can't forget them. What I'm inviting you today to think about these conditions in a broader way, in a deeper way, because there's a lot more to the story than just, hey, these are metabolic disorders, change your lifestyle, and you can, basically cure this disease. Or we can say things like type 2 diabetes is completely lifestyle related. And it is lifestyle related, but completely, no. There are some other factors going on here, which is why a lot of people who, especially in the mitochondrial world, have an awareness of mitochondrial health and all of Jack Krus's work and so forth, they go all into this. They improve their indoor light environment, they improve their sunlight environment, they improve their diet. Yet there's still room for improvement. They haven't made this. Yeah, they can see some improvements, but this breakthrough hasn't yet occurred. I'm going to talk about all of these things today so you can understand metabolic disorders. And I'm specifically going to talk about type 2 diabetes today, but honestly, what I'm going to talk about applies to any chronic disease that's out there today. But I also want to preface this conversation by saying, well, I want to help to expand the way that people think about their health. And that in part starts with changing the way that we think about diseases and disorders. Specifically, moving away from medical diagnoses and just focusing on medical diagnoses. For example, I have type 2 diabetes, I have hypothyroidism, I have PCOS. And you'll go to your doctor, your practitioner, whether it's alternative or whether it's allopathic. They'll put you in this box, they'll give you a protocol that they've come up with for these individuals that everybody who comes in with type 2 diabetes gets, or everybody with hypothyroidism. It's very similar to each person who comes in with that disease diagnosis, or who gets that disease diagnosis. That is, it's fine. You can give somebody a disease diagnosis if you want. But if somebody has given you a disease diagnosis, it's not very helpful in getting to the root as to why you're struggling with that disorder. But also, we have to understand that even if 1 million plus people have the same disease diagnosis, they're all going to have different symptoms. Their body is going to express the disease or disorder in a very unique way. And that's what we need to move towards. This is a more helpful direction. It's more helpful, meaning we gain more insight and specifics about somebody's symptoms, and therefore we better know and understand how to effectively and accurately treat that person and help to stimulate their immune system in a way that actually allows their organism to move towards its cure. Okay, this is where we have the most room for growth in all forms of medicine: allopathic, naturopathic, functional, etc. Now, don't get me wrong. We don't need to totally throw away medical diagnoses. We don't have to. A lot of people want to know, hey, what am I dealing with? What is this? We've been trained to think about health in this way. Oh, I have this, I have that. And then we Google it, and then we get this. But we don't actually, Google, doesn't know your organism. I know it's really trying to with all the AI BS that's going on, but the symptoms that your body expresses are going to be unique to you. And that's what we have to focus on rectifying, if we actually want to get to the root of what's going on. So, we haven't been taught and trained to solely to focus on health in this way. We've been taught to focus on, hey, you have a disease condition, and this pulls our attention and energy away from what's really going on. And this is what we want to focus on, these little specifics. This is what's going to help you as a practitioner, especially as a homeopathic practitioner, or maybe you're studying mitochondrial health. Knowing these things and understanding these I hate the word nuances, but I'm just going to say it, knowing these nuances about somebody's symptoms and health and the way their body's expressing itself is gold to getting each person moving towards their own quote unquote cure. I'm going to give you an example here. Globally, right now, currently, we have about 537 million people with type 2 diabetes. Those are the reported cases. I know people who are very much overweight, people who are even obese, their doctor hasn't diagnosed them with type 2 diabetes. You don't need a test to, to give you these results. You can tell by your symptoms, by looking in a mirror, so this is the reported cases. 537 million people globally reported type 2 diabetics. Okay, this number is expected to reach well over 780 million people globally by 2045. Now, what we have to understand about not only type 2 diabetes, but every other medical condition is that, as I'm mentioning here, and I really want to make this point clear during this episode, is that each person is going to have unique symptoms. Of course, there's going to be some people with very similar symptoms. Yes, this person's aggravated by cold, that person's aggravated by cold. This person sweats on their cervical spine during sleep, and so does that one, etc. But there are going to be some distinguishing symptoms, and not everyone with type 2 diabetes are going to have those symptoms. The symptoms are going to vary. It may vary by a few seemingly small but very important symptoms, and this is invaluable from a treatment standpoint. This is where we have more room for growth. This is all the people who are spouting things on how to correct your health and do bloodletting and run your labs. It's like, that shit doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. It's not going to get you to an improved state of health. So, I'm going to give you another example here. Some people with type 2 diabetes have very few cravings for sugar. Some people have zero cravings for sugar, and they're type 2 diabetics. I have several homeopathic clients like this. They have type 2 diabetes, or they're obese, undiagnosed type 2 diabetes, yet they don't eat sugar and they don't get better. They still struggle with type 2 diabetes symptoms. So most people assume that if someone has type 2 diabetes, they eat too much sugar. That's it. Just stop eating sugar and, you'll lose weight and start exercising. And while some of this can be true, it isn't true every single time. And the story goes much deeper than this. And from a homeopathic perspective, type 2 diabetes, treatment for type 2 diabetes is very different for somebody who craves sugar versus somebody and sweets versus somebody who has little to no interest in sweets or sugar. But if you go into any other medical practice, if you go into an allopathic doctor, if you go into a naturopath, if you go into a functional doc, they're going to give you the same thing, whether you crave sugar or not, and you struggle with type 2 diabetes. And this is the huge fault in the medical world. So this is how allopathic medicine, naturopaths, functional docs, not that they're not, some of them aren't amazing people and passionate about what they do and well-intentioned. The fact of the matter is they don't think about health in this expansive way. They look at diseases, they look at disease diagnoses, and they prescribe based on the disease, or they prescribe based on your blood work. It's so unhelpful. In order to attain real cures, we have to treat the person and the person's symptoms and the person's personality, not the disease diagnosis. This will result in a fail every single time. It's something I'm very passionate about, because a lot of people that, they come into my practice and I've tried everything, I'm not better. And it's because the approach focuses on some sort of diagnosis versus the person's unique symptoms. So today, I'm going to talk about root causes of metabolic disorder, how you can prevent and start to reverse your condition, how to understand and know when more is needed than simply food and exercise and sunlight, how you can tell this, and I'm going to provide you with some tools to help you support your metabolic health in deeper, more effective ways. So before I get into the episode, I have two announcements, all right? Number one, and I know I've been sharing this with you all for the past few weeks, but coming up this October 6th through 8th, I'm going to be hosting on our farm here in northern New Mexico an in-person Foundations of Classical Homeopathy intensive. I'm going to teach you how to use homeopathic medicine in effective, safe, and helpful ways for approaching chronic and acute conditions. And weather permitting, I'm sure it will, because we live in a very dry climate. Teachings will be held outside, and we'll also be enjoying lots of fall harvest, fresh farm food. We're starting to get apples now, and I'm researching the best apple presses, because who doesn't like cider? So good, right? But and how to turn those apples into something like really productive. There are literally so many apples coming off our trees here. And with our neighbors, people just keep bringing us apples. We don't have apples yet on our property because we're just starting to plant our apple trees, and we were not, the property didn't have any apple trees on it before we got here. So we're planting that seed. But this is an awesome fall food, by the way. I sauteed some apples in just a skillet with a peeps of butter and spices like cinnamon and cardamom and a little sea salt and just a pinch of black pepper and a little bit of nutmeg, and bake those. And oh my gosh, they were so good. And put like a heap of goat yogurt or sheep yogurt on top. Oh man, so good. But anyway, yeah, I got sidetracked because the apples were amazing. I love apple season. Fall is like one of my favorite seasons. It's just like you're in the kitchen, you're like ready, go. You have like all these vegetables and fruits and foods in front of you, and you have to think about, I love a challenge. So I got, okay, what can I do with that before it goes bad? Ready, go. So anyway, at the intensive, there's going to be a lot of fall harvest, fresh farm food, as part of the intensive as well. And you can learn more about the intensive, and you can set up a Zoom call with me if you're like, hey, I want to know more about this, go over the details, what's it entail? What if I have food sensitivities? What if I need to break up my payment? Yes, all of that is possible, workable, no problem. You can email me to set up a Zoom call, and you can go to my site, heathershepherd.com, go to the homeopathy tab, and you will see a drop-down menu, Foundations Intensive, and you can go there to learn more about the in-person intensive. Okay, announcement number 2. Homemade chocolate is back. Yes, it is. Over the past several months, I've been fine-tuning my chocolate recipe. Maybe a year or so ago, I was selling chocolate bars, and got some great feedback from you all and from just experimenting with that process. And so over the past several months, I've been, really learning how to temper the chocolate and to work with the chocolate, and to create a really awesome caramel sauce to go on top of the chocolate. Okay. Now, the chocolate I'm making, no joke, it's really high quality, authentic bean to bar chocolate. Now, most people talk a big game with words like bean to bar, which is why I freaking hate saying stuff like that, because they're like, oh yeah, just another hipster. And I hope I'm not considered a hipster, but words like bean to bar, I like, is it really? Because most people's chocolate really isn't bean to bar, which is why I hate, sayings like this. But my chocolate honestly is literally bean to bar. So I get these beans from a cacao farmer in Mexico. He's this a guy, Horacio, that I met during our last visit to Nayarit. And we crush the beans with a stone grinder and turn it into what we think are some of the best chocolate bars that we've had. Mexico spoiled me as soon as I went there. It's been a few years now, but I had chocolate there, and I was like, when I got home back to the States and I tried chocolate and I went to get a bar, I'm like, okay, here we go. I literally spit it out. I was like, oh my God, it's like so bad. I literally haven't been able to buy a bar of chocolate, and I love chocolate, since being back from Mexico. And this has inspired me to make chocolate bars that actually taste good. Single origin chocolate, another word that I really, So anyway, I am going to be selling what I'm currently calling my almond Snickers bar, which is a combo of organic cacao and cacao butter and raw honey and grass-fed butter and sea salt, and of course almonds that I buy raw almonds, I soak, dehydrate them, and they're on the bar as well. So those bars are available now for purchase at our farm store here at the farm or online. And I make a fresh batch of bars each week, and currently offer shipping. I believe that's every Wednesday. We're going to start doing that. So you can learn more about my chocolate bars, pre-order for next Wednesday at ojoconejo.com. OJOCONEJO. Eye of the rabbit is what that translates to. But go to the farm store tab, scroll down, and you will see our chocolate bars there. So I'm super excited to offer this to you all. It's fun for me to make the bars. Then, also giving people this really great quality product that's healthy fats. It's chock full of polyphenols. I make the butter that goes into the bars. I make the caramel, and then you have a chocolate bar that's authentic, doesn't taste like chalk or have soy or other fillers in it. So ojoconejo.com, farm store tab, and then you can scroll down and see, you can read more about the bars and decide if it's something you want to, take a bite out of. All right, let's talk metabolic disorder. Okay, we talked chocolates, so now we got to talk about metabolic disorder. So, let me just say first that here's a question that I want to put forth here. Will eating sugary foods cause metabolic disorder? And the answer is, it depends. So it depends, because are you eating like raw honey? Are you eating, GMO cane sugar? Are you eating sugar all day? Are you eating fruit out of season? Are you eating fruit in season? We have to consider all these things. It's just not like, oh, sugar causes metabolic disorder. Whoa, that's way too much of a simplification. And we need to look at this in a deeper way. Now, like all conditions, there has to be a genetic predisposition in place for metabolic disorder. People who noticeably struggle with their weight are also often sedentary and eat a lot of crap. But honestly, this isn't always the case. That's what we think the case is for people with metabolic disorder, type 2 diabetes, weight struggles, that they sit too long and too much, and they eat too much, and they eat a lot of sugar. Sometimes that is the case, but it isn't always the case. I know plenty of people with metabolic disorder, type 2 diabetes. They struggle with their weight, they struggle with their energy levels, they struggle to be motivated to go out and move their body. But I know plenty of people who have metabolic disorder, who do all the circadian practices, who are active and simply can't get the weight off. So frustrating, right? And their diet isn't bad to the point where it should cause stubborn weight issues or even overweight conditions or even obesity. I know many people who have that struggle. Many metabolic conditions today are a result of a deep pathology in the genetic line, like all chronic diseases today. Metabolic disorder, and the more advanced it is, isn't because you sit on your ass and eat too much sugar in most cases. Are there some people like that who just eat McDonald's and, eat Little Debbie's and, sit there and watch Wheel of Fortune all day? Yeah, sure. Okay. Like, absolutely. And that's a totally different case. I'm not focusing on that type of person today. Today, I'm focusing on people who do all of the right things or many of the right things, and they still struggle with their weight, and they still struggle with some sort of metabolic issue. That's what I'm focusing on today. And these situations are situations where there's a deep metabolic pathology in the gene pool. It's not all about what you're doing this lifetime. Have certain choices that you've made this lifetime turned that genetic switch, the volume on that switch up to get you to this place? Yes, absolutely. It happens to everyone. Okay. So, when you fall into this category of weight struggles, metabolic issues, maybe even type 2 diabetes, maybe even overweight, and you're doing the sunlight, you're eating a relatively good diet, not to the point where you should, have these struggles, we have to understand that there were metabolic health issues in the family line, your parents and beyond. Cancer, weight struggles, overweight tendency, sluggish thyroid function. You can see in the family line when the body types are similar in this way, and over time there's a similar, gosh, I'm going to try to think of a way of how to describe this to you all, but the body type, it's kind of like, they describe it as, what is it, like thrift? It's not, I can't remember the type of genes, but they describe it in a way that it's like there's more of this heaviness to the body. There's more of this inflammation and like a puffiness to the body. And we often see this in the gene pool, okay? So this type of body constitution, I can speak from firsthand experience, is very prominent on my father's side of the family. And it's not a result of bad luck or bad food. Sure, my family eats their fair share of sugar and so forth, but not to the point that should result in the type of obesity that they struggle with on my father's side of the family. Something's off, especially my dad. My dad is very active. He's not a sedentary guy by any means, but you would look at him and you'd be like, oh, that dude's sedentary. He must eat a lot of sugar and not move at all. That's not the case. That's definitely not his case at all. But is there some things he could fine tune this to help with his health? Absolutely. And I'll talk about some of those physical things you can also do to support your metabolic health. But there's something in my father's side of the gene pool that is fueling this genetic predisposition. So we often see this. We see obesity struggles or overweight struggles, or maybe it's hypothyroid struggles, or maybe it's energy production struggles. And we often see this throughout the lineage. When we see this pattern in a family line, we know there's something deeper going on beyond sugar. Now, as I mentioned, unless someone sits on the couch and, all day and eats and watches The Price is Right, then we have to really question what's going on a deeper level. Genetic predisposition is always in place when somebody is struggling to lose weight, by doing all of the right things. And by all the right things, I mean all the mito practices with sunlight and diet and indoor lighting, and they exercise, but they still, like, it's a struggle. I know what that feels like. So now there are some people who do the diet, the sunlight diet. I'm going to give you some tips on that here today. They exercise, they do the sunlight RX, and they make astounding progress with their weight, with their metabolic health. And there are others who also take this approach. They make some progress, but as soon as they look at a piece of pie, or maybe they don't, maybe they're not even eating that, they put on 15 pounds, or they literally can't get the weight off. So there are many prominent figures, I'm not going to mention any names, in the mitochondrial world who have made significant progress with their metabolic health by following the sunlight RX, by eating a seasonal diet, by mitigating blue light. However, full progress, lasting progress, it's just apparently not being made. And this is because the underlying genetic predisposition cannot be removed with mito hacks. Okay. What are the mito hacks? Sunlight diet, indoor light environment. Are those important? Please don't listen to this and be like, oh, well, F those. I'm still going to blast myself with artificial light at night and Wi-Fi and not go outside in the sun. No, please don't take that in that way. That's not what I'm saying. Those are foundational and super supportive and important to all wakes of health. Okay. They are a huge support, absolutely. But adding in the homeopathy piece can be monumental in any health condition where genetic predisposition is strong and causing a block to healing. This is what we call a block to healing. When you do all the right things and still struggle, block to healing. What are some blocks to healing? Genetic predisposition, trauma, PTSD, complex PTSD, emotional stuckness, certain emotions that haven't been healed or addressed, which also can be addressed with homeopathy. Being in an abusive or being in a relationship where that's abusive, or where your voice is taken away, or you're not allowed to express your beliefs or feelings or creativity. All of these can be blocks to healing. Genetic predisposition, huge block to healing. This is why I love homeopathy so much. We can use this medicine to start to remove the genetic predispositions. Now, before I'm going to end the episode with talking about things like the Sunlight RX and an ancestral/sunlight diet and how you can use those to support your metabolic health. But I also want to just emphasize here, before I go there, that there are the suppressive therapies can activate the genetic predisposition. So let's say you have susceptibility to obesity or type 2 diabetes in your family line. That's me right here, all the way, 1,000,000%. Million percent. Now, as you can tell, I'm not an obese person, okay? So why not? Because other people in my family, especially on my father's side, they struggle with this. All right. And why don't I just now like naturally why is this not hitting me yet? Why am I not struggling with obesity? And there are some reasons. Well, there are many reasons why. One is because I commit hard to my Sunlight RX and to an ancestral/sunlight diet. Hands down, those are important parts of my life. And mitigating artificial light, yes. Now, I will say, and those are the physical practices. If we're not even talking about homeopathy right now, if you just focus on those things, you should make some improvements with your metabolic health. For example, before I had any clue or idea about sunlight, Wi-Fi, an ancestral diet, and so forth, I was much heavier than I am today. I'd say much. I'd say probably 15 pounds heavier than I am right now, maybe 20. I got to a point where, Jen was like, you got to do something about this. I was like, yeah, I know, I feel horrible. And so, so when I learned about sunlight, when I learned about EMFs, when I learned about an ancestral sunlight diet, when I put all these things together, I lost the weight. It came off. It was easy. That was easy. For me, I stopped the genetic predisposition from advancing. Now, for some people, especially people who have had a lot of suppressive therapies, and don't get me wrong, I've had plenty of suppressive therapies, but I've had a lot less than other people. I didn't take that many antibiotics. I especially haven't taken any in decades. I've never taken birth control. Anything that manipulates your hormones, okay, like birth control, like copper IUDs, like birth control, anything birth control related, any type of like prednisone or these sort of steroid drugs, they will send this genetic predisposition, if you have it in terms of metabolic disorder, boom, they will take that and run with it. That is a huge way to activate the genetic predisposition. So the genetic predisposition, what I'm getting at, it has to be activated. Something has to activate that genetic predisposition. So what activates genetic predisposition are the suppressive therapies. And when we're talking about metabolic disorder, that includes any type of birth control, as well as antibiotics, as well as the hormone disruptive prescriptions. Prednisone, it's ridiculous. When I just did a podcast on that, please take a listen if you haven't, and if you've taken prednisone, or if a doctor is trying to convince you that that's a good idea, it's not. And you can listen to that episode to learn why. So the genetic predisposition has to be activated. And with each suppressive therapy, it gets activated a little more, and then 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 maybe a big little more, right? And so with each suppressive and or each like massive stress that we encounter, maybe a divorce, maybe a loved one passes away, maybe they're, something like that, this can activate the genetic predisposition. So it's not like, boom, one day you wake up and suddenly you have type 2 diabetes. It's that if this is in your genetic predisposition, type 2 diabetes and metabolic disorders, each time a suppressive therapy comes in, that genetic predisposition gets, it advances even deeper. So instead of feeling like, oh, I'm a little tired, now you can't lose weight, now you can't get, now you don't have any energy to move, now you don't have any motivation for life, now no matter what you do, the weight doesn't come off, etc. So that genetic predisposition has been activated. The only modality I found up until this point, because things always change, we discover new things, this doesn't have to be like an always thing, but up until this point, what the modality I found to be able to reverse genetic predisposition is homeopathy, when it's practiced in when it's played to its strengths. So many people use homeopathy and they just repeat a remedy and take it too frequently and take it too often, and then they're like, oh, it doesn't work. You have to understand how to use the medicine in order for it to work. We wouldn't do that with prescription drugs. Oh, I feel like taking a dose now, and then a dose of this here, and then a dose of, I hope not anyway, right? You'd be dead if you did it that way with allopathic medicine. And so that's not the way to practice homeopathy. So really understanding how to use the medicine, which is what I'll teach you in the Foundations Intensive, and what I teach you in my practitioner training 18-month course. So I teach you how to do, so you can totally nail it and help people reverse their genetic predispositions, these things that people say, oh, it's incurable, you just have to learn to live with it, and so forth. So that's what I want to say with regard to metabolic disorder, in terms of looking at this issue from a deeper root cause and how you can start to work with that on a deeper level. Okay, I want to finish the episode here by talking about the Sunlight RX and the ancestral, sunlight diet. So first of all, these practices, while they are not capable for modern humans who have been so suppressed with so many jabs, antibiotics, drugs, birth control, you name it, this is why it's not possible anymore to just use diet, light, exercise to completely reverse diseases. Anyone who can do that, the disease or genetic predisposition isn't very strong in that individual. So it's why somebody can eat this or that diet and be like, oh my God, I cured my cancer on keto. And the other person's like, mine got worse. Okay, so, and also there's a whole lot I could say about that, but it's also generalizing the treatment. It's not specifying the treatment, and some people will do worse with fats than others. So anyway, that's a whole other story. I want to start with the Sunlight RX. So in a nutshell, the Sunlight RX reestablishes balance to your circadian clocks. What's the Sunlight RX? It's a 4-step protocol that I came up with when I had my TBI, my brain injury, that teaches you how to use sunlight in a therapeutic way in order to improve, support your health and healing on all levels. So very important when it comes to reestablishing metabolic health as well. So the Sunlight RX helps to rebalance your circadian clocks. This word is thrown around so much, say, oh, circadian rhythm, circadian clock, circadian this or that, but we don't understand what it really means or how important it is to our health. It's literally the base of our health. It's the foundation of our health. And once your circadian clocks are dysregulated, you're going to have issues. Now, the other thing that isn't talked about in the mito world is how antibiotics and prescription medications also dysregulate the circadian clocks, and how sunlight and diet cannot reverse that process. It's incapable of. The drugs are too strong, and the sunlight and the diet aren't strong enough to pull that out by the roots, the antibiotics and so forth that cause circadian clock dysregulation. That's another reason why I use homeopathy, because it can establish that, reestablish that, I should say. So the Sunlight RX helps to reestablish and balance your circadian clocks. I know a lot of you know about the Sunlight RX, but I'm just going to give you a brief insight here, especially when it comes to metabolic health, as to how it supports that aspect of your health. So we know that any light, whether it's from a computer screen, sunlight, a LED light, somebody's car headlights that are coming from you, you open the fridge, you get blasted with light. Tape your light shut, by the way, if that's something you struggle with. Just tape your light on your fridge, and you don't have to deal with that. You shouldn't be opening the fridge after dark anyway, so that's, if your partner's like, hey, I can't see anything, it's like, well, babe, you shouldn't be opening the fridge after dark. So anyway, the light that enters your eye and hits your retina signals to your main circadian clock hub, the PVN, the paraventricular nucleus, what hormones and what metabolic signals to produce and release into the bloodstream, into the body. So if it's blue light, you're going to get heaps of cortisol. It's going to say, oh, release heaps of cortisol. If it's red combined with blue, it's going to be, just a little bit of cortisol, not this full blast. If it's solar noon, it's going to be more cortisol. If it's nighttime, it's going to be melatonin. If it's solar noon, it's also going to be UVB. So, here we go. Let's pump out vitamin D and other hormones, right? So the light that hits your retina and gets translated back to the PVN, receives that message and translates it into what hormones do I release and what metabolic signals do I release right now. Light determines that. There have been studies that show people can activate type 2 diabetic symptoms and hormones just from looking at artificial light. Harvard did a study on that. Probably many other people since then have done a study on that. But literally, you can just look at artificial light and trigger type 2 diabetes like conditions. Okay, so now I want to talk about UVB light. So UVB light is huge when it comes to anybody with metabolic struggles. Now, don't just think, oh, UVB light's amazing, I can skip the first two steps of the Sunlight RX, which is sunrise and then UVA, and then just go out in UVB and support my metabolic health. That's unfortunately not how it works. Chronological order does matter when it comes to the Sunlight RX and how it and its ability to have this therapeutic effect on your body. You have to go in this chronological order. When you get to UVB, you've already done your sunrise, step 1, you've already done your UVA, step 2. UVB, I want to focus on this for the purpose of this episode because UVB is huge in terms of supporting metabolic health. For one, UVB light depletes glucose from the liver. So a lot of people with metabolic disorder struggle with performing this task. UVB also establishes a certain set of gut microbacteria, or gut bacteria, I should say, that is equipped to produce how do I want to say this in an easy way? When you're outside in UVB light, your eyes receive that message, deliver it to the PVN, and then we have something called the gut-brain axis, right? That message also goes down along the gut-brain axis and signals to your gut microbiome, hey, UVB's present. Start pumping out. Start pumping out gut bacteria that are able to handle simple sugars. Okay, like what's present in UVB light? Fruits, vegetables like peppers and other nightshades like eggplant and so forth, and foods that require bacteria equipped to digest, absorb, assimilate simple sugars. Okay, so this is huge because people with metabolic disorder, they struggle to absorb, utilize, process, assimilate simple sugars. Instead, that often gets stored as fat. Okay, now when you get more UVB light, you help to rectify that, that area of your health. You help to establish a set of gut bacteria that are able to help you deal with sugar in a more beneficial, useful, helpful way. So everything in your body runs on according to this clock system, runs according to your the health of your circadian clocks. Meal timing, hormone release, metabolic signals, cortisol, melatonin release, sunlight, and the light that you look at regulates this. And this is why learning how to safeguard your body, your circadian biology, by using certain indoor practices it's highly recommended. It's very helpful. We have to be doing this. We have to be mitigating artificial light at night and so forth. The other thing I'll say about UVB light is that it helps with the production of storage form vitamin D. I was just having dinner with some friends my wife invited over the other night, and we were talking about vitamin D, and I was like, they were asking, like, what about vitamin D and sunlight, and do I get it at sunrise? I'm like, no, you can't make vitamin D at sunrise, but you precondition your cells at sunrise to be able to make vitamin D later in the day, which is a huge misconception. A lot of people are like, oh my God, I'm going to make vitamin D. I'm out here at step one, sunrise. Like, well, not technically, but you're going to prep your body to make vitamin D when UVB comes out. But UVB is a storage form, helps to produce a storage form of vitamin D. Vitamin D is a hormone. That's what I was getting to. So I was like, oh yeah, okay, so vitamin D is a hormone. And they're like, wait, what? Vitamin D is a hormone? I know, it's so confusing because they call it vitamin D, but vitamin D is a hormone. It's a steroid hormone. It's a huge part of our metabolic health and hormone health. It helps to regulate blood sugar levels and support metabolic health and signaling, and it's cardioprotective. And you will support your vitamin D levels by getting in UVB light. So these are a few ways on how the Sunlight RX can support your metabolic health. Now, if you want to deep dive into the Sunlight RX, I have a few ways you can do that are actually accessible, available right now on my site. You can go to my site, heathershepherd.com, and you can get a copy of the Sunlight RX ebook, or you can watch, you can purchase the Sunlight RX workshop, which takes you on a Sunlight RX deep dive with regard to how to practice the Sunlight RX to support your overall health, your metabolic health, your hormone health. All right, let's finish up here by talking about diet and metabolic health. There's a few, I'm going to talk about 3 main things. These are going to sound very simple, but literally, if you struggle with metabolic health, or you know somebody who does, maybe you have a client who struggles with metabolic health, and you give them, you focus on these 3 things, literally their metabolic health will improve. How much it'll improve will depend on that specific person and their organism. But I've seen people make massive improvements with their metabolic health by doing these 3 things. Number 1, don't skip breakfast, for the love of God. Whatever that bulletproof dude has taught you, throw it out, forget about it, forget about all the intermittent fasting through breakfast that everybody says is a panacea and heals this and that and is good for you. It's not. Don't skip breakfast, and make sure you eat ample animal protein at breakfast. That is number 1. Do not fast through breakfast. Okay, number 2, don't snack. If you need something midday, make it a protein-rich something or other, and just have just one time, okay? You're not like grazing and snacking throughout the entire afternoon. That's a really bad idea when it comes to your metabolic health. The absolute worst advice, well, I mean, let's be honest, all of it's bad, but this like a horrific piece of advice that the medical profession has given people with type 2 diabetes is to eat small, frequent meals. For the love of God, please don't do that. That will destroy your metabolic health. It's like putting a time bomb on it, because now your pancreas and liver are just constantly having to work and pump out hormones and chemicals in order to help regulate your blood sugar by breaking down the food and so forth. And no, we do not want to do that. Your pancreas, your liver, your digestive organs need a break. They cannot constantly be working to help you regulate your blood sugar and break down your food in this way. That is a very bad idea. So please avoid this. And number 3, leave at least 4 hours between your last meal and when you lay down in your bed to go to sleep. You want to sit up in your bed and read or whatever, great. Just don't lay down. This is going, as soon as you lay down and you shut your eyes, a whole new process comes in when it comes to, the metabolic hormones and signals that are released. So leave at least 4 hours between your last meal and when you go to bed. Those are my top 3 things that I would suggest when it comes to diet and supporting your metabolic health. Are there other things? Absolutely. Yeah, of course. But that's where I would start. So I hope this helps you, have more insight around metabolic disorder, some of the main root causes, what you can actually do, action steps you can take to support your metabolic health. Go get a copy of the Sunlight RX. It's literally under $20 and you can use it for the rest of your life to support your metabolic health. Practice the 3 ancestral diet tips, Sunlight diet tips I've given you here. And when you're ready, I would encourage you to reach out to engage in some homeopathy work together so we can support deeper root causes of your metabolic health. Okay, everyone. See you next week.